Hello and welcome to our interview program 12 Minutes With. Today my guest is the Palestinian Foreign Affairs Minister, Varsen Aghabekian. Minister, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for hosting me.
Absolutely. So the whole world obviously is watching what is unraveling in the Middle East, namely in Iran and Lebanon, with the US-Israeli war in that region. How is it affecting you? How is it affecting the Palestinians, first politically?
Well, any escalation in the region, any conflict in the region affects the whole region, and especially the Palestinians, because the Palestinian issue invariably becomes marginalized. And we've seen this happening in the last 40 days. So what we are asking for or looking forward to is de-escalation and the diplomacy and the dialogue to take place rather than the military operations. So we hope that both parties can come to terms and a ceasefire becomes sustainable, albeit what has come out from the last meeting in Pakistan is still problematic, but we hope that things can be aired out to a better path.
Are there any effects economically for Palestinians that you can mention?
Yes, of course, because this whole war is disastrous on all levels, economically first and foremost. And if the neighboring countries are affected economically, it would definitely affect the Palestinians. The Palestinians today are under a lot of financial strain.
Do you have a plan to help citizens, or the finances of the Palestinian authorities are such that you cannot provide the extra help?
One of our foremost priorities is to help people steadfast, but that steadfastness needs money, and that money is not available, especially today when the Palestinian clearance revenue money has been withheld by the Israelis, and we have billions of shekels sitting in Israeli banks. Today, the Palestinian Authority is unable to meet the basic needs of its people. I mean, if we talk about education, healthcare, water, electricity, we're passing through very, very rough times.
Various UN agencies have noted an uptick in settlers' attacks against Palestinian civilians, especially since the Hamas terrorist attack in October 2023, but it's only getting worse and worse. What have you observed on the ground yourself?
Well, settler attacks are part of a systematic policy on displacing Palestinians, forcing Palestinians to leave, terrorizing Palestinian lives. It cannot be separated from the overall state policy. And yes, we see an intensification of settler terror for the last 2 years, and more specifically in the last 3 months. I just received a report on settler attacks for the month of March last month, and there were 3,000 attacks, a bit over 3,000 attacks, which means tens of attacks every day. And these attacks come in various forms and shapes. It's no longer going out and being stopped by a settler. These settlers are coming to our homes. They are attacking us in our homes, in our backyards. They loot homes, they burn trees, they burn the yards, they burn vehicles, they stone our children. So, and they are very much supported by the Israeli occupation forces. I mean, those occupation forces have an obligation to protect the occupied. But what we see is they either look and do nothing, or they are engaged in the actual terror attacks. And this needs to be stopped. It's very serious.
A few days ago, the army chief in Israel, Eyal Zamir, denounced the attacks and said they had to bring more troops to the West Bank. So they are short of troops, obviously, with all these wars going on at the same time. And a battalion was actually removed from Lebanon to be sent to the West Bank. Do you see any improvements in more troops trying to contain the violence or not?
I think this is necessary, but not enough at all, because we need to change the policy. The policy uses the settlers to terrorize the Palestinians. That needs to change. It's not enough to talk about it. It's not enough to call them terrorists. What we need to see action on the ground to halt whatever these terrorist settlers are doing.
Okay. Now, late last month, as you know, Israel voted to restore the death penalty, and the text is phrased in such a way that it clearly only addresses the Palestinians that would have committed fatal terrorist attacks against Israeli Jews. How did you receive that new law?
Well, again, it's part of a systematic policy of erasing the other. And this law has no legal base whatsoever. It's highly discriminatory because it relates to the Palestinians and only the Palestinians. And the world needs to wonder, I mean, when you see a state that calls itself civilized, instituting a death penalty law on prisoners of conscience and celebrating the institution of this law. So this needs to be looked upon with a lot of concern by the whole world.
But if I may, the law stipulates that it is for people. It doesn't say Palestinians, but it's phrased in a way that it is targeting Palestinians that are guilty and charged of having committed a fatal terrorist attack, of having killed a Jewish citizen. So these are particular prisoners.
Yes, but our people have been killed for decades.
Okay.
I mean, we have been subjected to death penalty by the Israelis for decades. The extrajudicial killing on our streets continue. What needs to happen is to look at the occupation and the root causes of this occupation and see what entitlements people have under occupation, what struggle, how they can struggle against that occupation and deal with it accordingly. Death penalty is something that is abolished all over the world.
Okay. Now, moving to the future of Palestinian statehood, are you watching the Israeli election that will take place in October 2026? In other words, are you hoping there will be a new Israeli administration that you can talk to resume some kind of dialogue?
Of course, we always hope for a new faces and new policy so that we can come to terms with the fact that we need to go to the root cause and start genuinely talking about it. We haven't seen this in the past Israeli governments because the policy has been the same. The policy has not changed. Israeli policy is expansionist, it's colonialist, it's annexationist, and they say it very clearly. Until they come to terms with the fact that for them to be in the area and for us to live in peace and security as neighbors, they have to respect the rights of their neighbors, the Palestinians. And these rights are enshrined in international law. We're not asking anything above international law.
Last but not least, under the Netanyahu's administration and Trump's administration, Jerusalem was annexed. So here goes the idea of a Palestinian state with East Jerusalem as its capital. Settlement activity has gone, has increased a lot under Netanyahu. How do you see that, for future talks now that, and as we know, the UN and international order and law is not exactly the reference anymore. It's been shunned left, right, and center. So are you ready to water down your expectations? I mean, how do you see things happening if and when a dialogue resumes?
If and when a dialogue resumes, that dialogue needs to follow the parameters of the two-state solution and nothing but international law, albeit that international law is under a lot of threat. I mean, the compass needs to be international law, even if it's under threat. And we will continue asking to work by the parameters of the Madrid Conference, the New York Declaration, the rights of the Palestinian people as enshrined in international law. And then when we come to terms, if a peace agreement is forged, then other areas can be negotiated, but not before the acknowledgement of Palestinian rights on their state as enshrined by international law on the 1967 lines.
Can East Jerusalem be negotiated?
East Jerusalem is part and parcel of occupied territory as per international law, and as such, we need to deal with it as occupied territory.
Okay. But do you understand that in Gaza, when the settlements were removed under Sharon, there were 8,000 settlers at the time. In the West Bank, there are 500,000, and if you include East Jerusalem, 700,000. Are you seriously, and I'm sorry, hoping that these settlements will be dismantled to make way for a Palestinian state? Is it realistic, in other words?
It has to be realistic. If it was realistic to displace 750,000 Palestinian refugees in 1948, and this was accepted by the world, it would be much easier to remove 750,000 illegal settlers living on stolen Palestinian land. They have Israel, they can go back to Israel proper if there is genuine intent on peace. And if there's genuine intent on peace, negotiations can take place afterwards, after the two parties say this is Israel and this is Palestine, and some border modifications can be negotiated, but not before the recognition of the rights of the Palestinian people.
Can you give me one concession that the Palestinians would be able to make to the Israeli if and when negotiations would resume? One concession Palestinians would be willing to make to the Israelis?
I think the question should be reversed. The question needs to go to the Israeli side. The Palestinians have made numerous concessions in the last 7 decades, and they have conceded 78% of historic Palestine. What we're asking for is to recognize our state, materialize the state on the 22%. It is Israel that needs to come forward. But as I said, if there is a genuine intent on peace, matters can be negotiated, but they need to be negotiated in good faith.
Well, I guess you'll be watching the U.S. elections as well in 2028.
Yes.
That's a game changer. Thank you, Minister. Thanks for being with us today.
You're welcome.